Asunder. After the War of the Worlds. For more information, please visit servingworlds.com. Written and performed by John Miro. Marcus stared at the screen and felt awe overtake his fear. The colors and lines of the mother ship were stunning, and the size. The ship looked the size of all of London. His thoughts felt dull and simple as he broke down what he saw. Iridescent domes piled upon each other like a mountain of bubbles a child might blow in a dish, spheres and cylinders decorating the sides. It was too large for him to truly grasp seeing it this close. Now the light pool had conveniently blown it up so gargantuan. All the lines were smooth and folded in upon themselves, as if they were made of molded clay and blown glass on a scale only gods could muster. "You can't seriously expect us to succeed like this," raged Dr. Grace. "Anyone with more than half a brain is back in Folkstone. We need a shakedown cruise. Do we even have enough food and water? This may take days, weeks." "Her Majesty has run out of time, Doctor," Mary blew back at him. "The Blitz is bludgeoning us to death, and what's left they take." He whipped a finger towards the screen, just as the image wavered again. "Keep that ship in view, damn you!" Hobe ran towards the closest pedestal. Mary half drew his sword. "Stand back!" "Let him work, Mary," Dr. Grace shouted down quickly. "He's rated on those machines, and your soldiers obviously are not. He should have been on my team all along." Mary ignored the doctor and circled in front of Hobe, just as another beam struck the ship. Both men's arms shot out as the deck tilted. "Let me through," Hobe barked, "unless you want that thing down our throats." A moment of hesitation, and a grunt of anger, and then Mary stepped aside. Hobe ran past. Marcus watched him leap atop the bubble and shoo a pale-faced boy out of a human-shaped wicker seat, jury-rigged over an invader-shaped one. The boy gratefully abandoned his post. Once Hobe was in the chair unmolested, Marcus followed Dr. Grace to another. "Out!" Dr. Grace snapped at the two seats occupied by boy-faced soldiers. They were quickly vacated. Marcus hauled himself up onto the bubble, assisted Dr. Grace with his own climb, and slipped into one of the seats, looking over the console. A smaller light pool clung to the top of a metal console, much like the ones he had experimented with before his exile. He scrolled quickly through the icons on the screen. "Good," he thought, licking sweat off his lips. "No bloody words, just the pictures. I can help." One of the icons Marcus recognized with a smile. "Oh, I can more than help." With a succession of quick taps through the air, he brought one of the mothership's gun batteries online. With more deft taps, he tasked them with destroying the small ships, quickly looming larger in the display. Bright flashes of light immediately began thinning out the attacking ships. "Rotten luck, the buggers should attack us," Grace muttered, "just when all Vicky's brains are seduced by a fancy meal and a soft bed." Marcus shivered. Sure, it was no sort of luck at all. "And damn fine luck you got yourself caught," Grace went on, clapping his shoulder. "With you two helping, I might just get us where we're going." Mary's head and shoulders appeared at the side of the pedestal. "Doctor," he said testily, "I thought this was the mother ship. Our fleets have more than one capital ship. Why shouldn't theirs?" "Do shut up, Mary," Grace snapped, his fingers sliding across words at his console and accessing systems quickly. "Ha!" he shouted in victory, waving his fingers through a selection of images in the light pool, and then slapped his fist through a red hexagonal shape. The ship lurched again beneath them. "Makes sense when you're swimming across an ocean of stars," Grace cackled, as the enemy ship on the display quickly shrunk in size. Marcus checked, and no, Hobe hadn't botched the camera view. He realized that the mothership he helped control was climbing ever faster into the sky, leaving the pirates far behind. Marcus leaned forward, staring hard. Compared to the new speed they made up and away, their foe seemed to be standing still. "Goodbye, pirates!" the doctor roared. A cheer rippled through the crowd. Marcus let out a gasp of relief and reached across to shake the doctor's hand. It was nothing, Dr. Grace said, modestly, his grandiose gestures and speech abandoned for the moment. I didn't build the ship, and it took me too damn long to figure out how to engage her mainsail, so to speak. Without those mains, the pirates will take a dog's age to catch us now. Marcus leaned back in his seat, a cold wave coming over him. You only just figured out how to fly her? He felt his fingers clamping over the arms of his chair, all of their own accord. The big engines? Yes. Grace shrugged. Well, I was pretty sure before. Hard to test on the bottom of the channel, you know. Marcus considered the sabotage in the harbor, the surprise attacks in the mouse hole, and this new bit of news, the doctor's breakthrough in mastering the mothership's mains. The timing of the attack had been exceedingly perfect. Had any of the pirates posing as loyal members of the project survived their assaults? Were they aboard ship with them, even now? More importantly, what could Marcus, a black man with absolutely no standing and absolutely no respect in the eyes of Lieutenant Colonel Mary, do about it? He thought back to Mary's words. Doctor, who's this other American with Lord Timbury? Blast! Grace pouted, staring at his nails now the emergency was past. There'd better be a nail file somewhere on this boat. Doctor, Marcus prompted. What? Grace looked up, appearing disoriented for a moment, then snapping his eyes onto Marcus. Oh, yes, your ambassador, dear boy. It seems he was at Lord Timbury's estate during the fall of London. Missed all the fun. Grace lifted his hand and rubbed at a broken nail. The alliance treaties got him a seat at the table. Now the pirate attacks, well, burned down the table, so— He trailed off, looking around in embarrassment before biting the broken nail clean off. Marcus sat back in his chair. Next to no scientists, only one lord, and an ambassador to the United States to see their mission through, with Lieutenant Colonel Mary filling Colonel Barton's shoes to complete the mess. He rubbed his face. He had no use for any politician, but perhaps an American voice at the top would improve their odds. They'd done a good job when the British wanted to conquer them in the New World, hadn't they? With time on his hands, Marcus looked around the room. He watched Lieutenants Burns and Jonas gather the soldiers together before Mary, who climbed atop another bubble to address them. We've had word back from Folkstone, men. Some of our comrades have fallen, but many more are safely away on our skyships. When the pirates chased us, they lost their opportunity to take them hostage. A small cheer came from the men, but Mary talked louder atop it. We'll return, and we'll make them answer for Folkstone Harbor. The ragged cheers came again in the soldiers' throats. Marcus felt a lump form in his own, and he begrudgingly nodded to Mary during the man's somber pause. But that ship is still coming. The lieutenant colonel scowled in Marcus and the doctor's direction. And it seems clear capturing our Dr. Grace was their objective. Of course it was, old chap. Grace winked at Marcus and shouted, The blighters can't goose their toys fast enough without me. Mary reddened but soldiered on. The pirates have tipped their hands showing us that ship. Unfortunately, they've also now seen ours. The civilian there, he pointed at Hobe, has pinned an eye on the pirate ship, and it's not given up. It's following. Like the tortoise follows the hare, Hobe shouted, not turning his head from the light pool. That bucket won't worry us. Until we turn around and head home, Marcus couldn't help but think. Yes, thank you, Mr. Martin, Mary bellowed. Hobe waved a hand back through the air, shushing the lieutenant colonel. True to form, Hobe. Despite his body's own shivering after all the action, Marcus had to hide a grin, listening to his engineer battling the lieutenant colonel, who tugged roughly on his coat, and gamely continued. While we have only stocked a small part of the supplies for this project, by Lieutenant Jonas's head count, we are less than 50, and therefore have several weeks' rations and water for that number. Plenty of other things to kill us yet, Dr. Grace whispered to Marcus with a grin and a wink. Marcus was unable to return either. What was it the doctor said about the black above the sky? It turned colder than the Arctic, and there was no air to breathe in that outer space. And you thought journeying in the sky was odd, Marcus. We have what we need, men, Mary said, his voice booming loud and deep. Marcus watched the man's eyes travel to every officer's face, and felt a little thrill of anticipation. Grudgingly he admitted Mary knew how to rouse the spirit. We have what we need, and we know what we need to do. We'll give the invaders a taste of their own, and we will end the Blitz. He pumped a fist in the air. God save the Queen! The soldiers roared the rallying cry back. Dr. Grace's eyeballs bulged in mock surprise. Oh, blimey! He intoned, then rolled his head lazily to Lieutenant Colonel Mary as he walked stiffly up to their bubble, accepting salutes, handshakes, and greetings from the men as he approached. I'll take a tea with 2 lumps, my good man. Get your own bloody tea, Lieutenant Colonel Mary spat back. Then, to Marcus's amazement, Mary continued, Jonas tells me you're the one who put the harbor gun back in working order. Marcus saw the ruddy-faced lieutenant climb into the next bubble and wave his hands through the station's light pool to bring it to life. The lieutenant looked up at that moment and met his eyes, but quickly returned his attention to his task. Marcus looked back to Mary and nodded warily. The threats of hanging the lieutenant colonel had made on their first meeting was fresh in his mind. Mary coughed into his fist. A cool head that called for, with the pirates chewing the rock up around you. His nose wrinkled, and Marcus could see the man wasn't pleased having to acknowledge Marcus's deeds. He also tells me Grace here owes you his life, which means everyone here does, and so... The lieutenant colonel swallowed hard. Thank you, Captain Riggs. I am in your debt, sir. The last word broke on his lips, and Mary turned quickly to leave. He paused a moment longer, though he did not again meet Marcus's eyes. I'll see to it you get some rooms to enjoy your tea in, he allowed, less harshly, after I report our status to Lord Timbry. With that final courtesy, Mary turned and fled, stiff of back and stony of face. Dr. Grace collapsed back into his seat. His eyes were wide, and faux shock played on his face. Will wonders ever cease? Marcus watched the man leave. Apparently not. He jerked straight, his eyes widening. He replayed each second of his journey through Midway in his head. The image in the gigantic pool of light wavered as Hobe smoothly swung the view from what was chasing them to where they were going. Is that... A familiar voice asked them tentatively, then swallowed. Marcus could not pull himself from his thoughts, and left it to Dr. Grace to greet Lieutenant Burns. It is, the doctor preened. You might want to shut your mouth, dear, Grace teased the soldier. You'll let in flies. Doctor, Marcus asked, cutting him off. Grace put a hand to his chest, misinterpreting the concern in Marcus's voice. He carried on his pantomime with a nod of his head towards Lieutenant Burns as he mouthed, Gorgeous! Owen Burns pointed at the white shape glowing in the pool. And we're going there. Grab a chair, Lieutenant, Grace said sweetly, patting the empty third seat in the bubble. It's going to be a long trip. You might as well get comfy. A strange day, Burns said in a dazed voice. He slapped his palm on top of the pedestal. Gentlemen, I wonder if you would do me the honor of dining with me this evening. Marcus still didn't answer. Dr. Grace grinned and patted the lieutenant's hand. We'd be delighted. Hobe sauntered over. Delighted about what, Doc? It appears you've finally been given your invite to dine with an officer. Hobe nodded to Burns. About time. Oh, Lieutenant, whatever shall I wear? Grace cooed. Marcus jerked upright out of his chair. The look on his face sufficient to cut off Grace's play-acting and draw the color from his own. Marcus, what is it? Marcus leaped over the side of the bubble and landed on the floor beside Lieutenant Burns, the slap of his soles echoing. Did you tell Jonas? He whispered. Tell him what? Marcus grabbed the lieutenant's arm and squeezed. About the gun. The harbor gun. Did you tell him I found the wires already cut? Eyebrows knit together in confusion. Owen thought and then shook his head. There was no time to... Marcus burst into a flat-out run for the next bubble, the one where Lieutenant Jonas sat, tapping expertly through a series of light-projected screens. Lieutenant Jonas, who had never trained in the labs of Midway. Lieutenant Jonas, whose lips had curled in anger when Marcus had protected Dr. Grace from the pirates. Lieutenant Jonas, who couldn't know the harbor guns had been sabotaged. Unless he'd had a hand in the sabotage himself. Marcus thought of all the souls gone to their rest in the harbor, and he let that rage bleed out and feed his body's charge. The bright lights of the bridge flickered. Another klaxon began to wail. Marcus was almost to the bubble when thin, multicolored beams of light began to paint the bodies of soldiers all around. He leaped up onto the bubble, his legs vaulting clear and landing down where Lieutenant Jonas sat, where Jonas now thrust the muzzle of an invader pistol into his face. The pistol fired, but missed his face thanks to the momentum that pushed Marcus further. Marcus felt everything beneath his left shoulder go numb, and he fell in a heap in the empty chair beside Jonas, who was on his feet now, eyes darting to the light pool at his station and back to Marcus. His lips formed a sadistic snarl, and he raised the gun again. Marcus's body spasmed as messages of pain reached his brain. Jonas reached behind him, reaching blindly for the light pool where just one button glowed. The button, Marcus knew, that would kill every man in the room. Too late, Fuzz. A red dot appeared on his forehead. His eyes became dull, unfocused, and then he fell back towards the light pool. Marcus clawed one hand out. He grabbed the man's tunic and pulled. He grunted in pain, lost his grip. But it was enough. Jonas slumped back in his chair, dead, his hand never having reached the light pool. Targeting lights still tracked each man as they moved through the room, but death did not rain down. Marcus turned his head and leaned it down on the cool metal of the bubble. There he saw Burns, arm outstretched, his pistol still at the ready, a curl of smoke drifting from the barrel. Marcus looked down upon all the earth. He smiled in awe at the white clouds swirling above the blue seas and the greens and the browns of the continents. Actually, his smile and awe were a combination of the wonder of staring down at his world and also the powerful action of the white powder Dr. Grace had mixed into a tin cupful of rum. While that mixture took effect on Marcus, Dr. Grace had disarmed the sentry systems and shooed every soldier he did not personally know away from the control bubbles. Marcus didn't have a clue how long he'd been sitting there, staring down at the planet Earth in the light pool, or how long it had been since the good doctor had returned. "Whatever will you do for your next trick, Marcus?" Grace muttered in the seat beside him. "Are we going to die out here?" he slurred. The doctor shook his head. "I think not. Especially now Mary's let me lock the controls and pick who gets to do the flying." Marcus lolled his head to the left. There was Hobe, grinning and sticking the fingers of both hands through the light pool before his own chair. "Don't mangle her sails," Marcus made his thick tongue say. Hobe laughed. "Where's the fun in that? I might pretend to, if I get a moment to put the fear into Burns again." Marcus tried to frown, but his lips weren't working well enough, and he gave up trying. "Burns isn't here?" Hobe laughed. "Oh, he's here. Safe bet he just got himself promoted, too." Somewhere in the room, Owen's booming voice was peeling paint from the walls. "Oh, good," Marcus said, and his eyes closed. When next Marcus woke, the bridge was bathed in the purest white light he'd ever seen, emanating from the enormous light pool in the center of the room. Marcus still felt lighter than air, although his shoulder was starting to ache a little. He heard Dr. Grace humming in the seat beside him, and asked what seemed the most sensible question he could muster. "Why do you call it Selene?" Dr. Grace had lain back in the third chair and begun working the knuckles of one hand with the other. He asked, and finally looked at Marcus. "Welcome back." "Why Selene?" "Well, I do so love the Greeks," he crooned. Marcus, unbothered after several months living with the doctor's ribald ways, gave the man a hard stare. Or tried to. "No, it's really down to them," Grace laughed. "That's what the Greeks called her." Marcus looked back to the light pool, leaning back against the headrest, and smiled. "We'll be the first men there," he thought with a thrill. Over the months, Marcus and the good doctor had shared whiskey and confessions of their fears. Dr. Grace wondered if the invaders would pound the world until the human race was extinct, or just long enough to find a way to safely return and complete their conquest. Or perhaps they had died off completely, Marcus had wondered in return, and it was simply their mindless and terrible machines which battered the helpless earth. What answers lay across this ocean of black, he wondered. And then he thought of Halifax, Samantha, and Robert. "I'll come back," he swore under his breath. "I'll find you." "Isn't she beautiful?" Grace sighed, not having heard Marcus's quiet oath. Twin spots of white danced in his eyes. Silver and white stabbed down onto the deck, overcoming the strange glow of alien metals and banishing shadow. Shadows, Marcus thought, where traitors lay in wait. Still, he couldn't help but be lost in her beauty. He'd never seen the sailor's friend loom this large. She had seen him through ocean storms in the depth of night. She had watched him laugh and chase his lover through the night. And Marcus had to believe she could steer him safely home again. "We're coming, my lovely," Dr. Grace called out. Marcus stared in fascination at the dark craters and shaded mountains marring her bright beauty. "We're coming," he echoed in wonder. Next stop, the moon. Will Marcus, Hobe, Lieutenant Burns, and Dr. Grace make it to the moon? Find out in Pyre, Book 2 of The War Between Worlds, coming soon. You have been listening to Asunder, the first in a series of tales after the War of the Worlds. For more information, please visit servingworlds.com. Music, Ibrido Umano by Dano, available at danosongs.com. Title image, War of the Worlds by Adam Blakemore. Learn more about Adam's artwork at blakey00.deviantart.com. Thank you for listening.